Hi, folks. Mr. Olson here. Let's do some econ. We're in Unit 4, Imperfect Competition. Today, we're doing our fourth and final market structure, which is oligopoly. Again, key reminder, you want to think about the four market structures in terms of a spectrum. Oligopoly is going to fit right there in between monopolistic competition and pure monopoly. In industries where we have oligopoly occur, there are a few large firms that dominate the market. It's usually fewer than 10. What's in a real world example? The cell phone service provider industry in the US is a oligopoly because we have four firms dominating the market: AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and then Sprint. In terms of the type of products in oligopolies, sometimes they're identical, sometimes they're differentiated. Oftentimes you see a lot of effort and advertising to differentiate products, but there also, it tends to be a lot of copying of attributes. So they end up being and some identical and converging sometimes as well. So it could go either way. Not a key characteristic for oligopoly, unlike monopolistic competition, where it was really central to our understanding of that market structure. Okay. There are high barriers to entry in oligopoly. The reason that only a few firms are going to maintain so much market share is because the barriers to entry are super high. What makes oligopoly, and then of course they have lots of control over price and they're going to be price makers. Okay. What does make oligopolies stand out from all the other market structures, however, is the idea of mutual interdependence. This is the key characteristic of oligopoly. Because there are so few firms, their price and output decisions directly impact other firms in the industry. And because of that, they're going to have to use strategic pricing. And this is a new concept that none of the other market structures have had to deal with yet. Okay. What are other real world examples of oligopolies? OPEC is a good example. OPEC is the organization of petroleum exporting countries, and it's what's called a colluding oligopoly. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Cereal companies in the US, car producers in the US are also industries where oligopoly occurs. So again, why are oligopolies going to occur? We're going to have a few large firms that are going to dominate the industry. All of them are going to have large market shares, and they're going to get to keep those large market shares and usually keep those profits because barriers to entry are so high. And as a reminder, what are examples of types of barriers to entry? Economies of scale is a really good example. If we want to understand the car industry and why a few large firms dominate the car industry, it's because of economies of scale. In order to be a firm that can make cars at the lowest cost, you have to be operating at such a large scale that it's harder for startups to get involved in the industry. Industries where there's high startup costs often creates economies of scale and oligopoly. And then finally, ownership of raw materials. OPEC is a good example of that. So how are we going to analyze strategic interdependence in our analysis of oligopolies? We're going to use game theory. Game theory is the study of how people make strategic decisions, and we're going to be able to use it to analyze oligopolies. Okay. If you're interested in the history of game theory, I definitely recommend watching A Beautiful Mind, which is the true story of John Nash and his invention of this field that's used in mathematics and economics and political science. Okay. We're going to use it to flush out our concept of interdependence among oligopolies. And what that means is their pricing and output decisions must be strategic in order to avoid economic losses. Okay. And we're going to be able to analyze that with the simulations that we're doing in this class. So I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a business person right now. Imagine you are firm one, and imagine that you are competing with firm two, and you and firm two are going to both have to make a choice. Do we price our product high or low? Because there are only, in this case, two firms that have two choices, there are only four possible outcomes in terms of our profits. Okay, so we're going to assume that all this information is public. You have all this information. Firm two has all this information, and you're both going to try to do what's best for yourselves. If both of you price high, you're going to get $20 of profit each. If both of you price low, you're going to get $10 of profit each. If your competitor prices high and you price low, you're going to get $30 of profit, and they're not going to get any. You're going to steal other customers. On the other hand, if you price high and they price low, they're going to steal other customers, and they're going to get $30 of profit and you're not going to get anything. So what I want you to think about is what you would do in this case if you were firm one. What decision would you make, and try to make a prediction about what you think the outcome would be. Okay, so lots of interesting things to break down there. Couple things I want you to notice, and we're going to flesh out this as we go through other examples. I want you to notice that you had an incentive to collude. To collude is to cooperate with the other firm so that the joint profits could be highest. Okay, to collude in this instance would be to both agree to set your prices high. In that case, the total profit would be $40 and you would get $20 each. So that would be a successful collusion. So you had an incentive to collude. But on the other hand, if you could convince firm two that you were going to collude with them, then you now had an incentive to cheat on your agreement. Because if you could convince firm two to go high, and then you ended up undercutting them and going low, your individual profit would be highest at $30. Okay, so these are the types of scenarios that oligopolies are going to have to deal with. Let's do another analysis where we can compare individual profits again. And I want to teach you the skill of how to find the dominant strategy. So same scenario, firm one and firm two are trying to decide how they should price things. In this case, the payouts are a little bit different than they were in the last example. What you're looking at in each box is the payout for each firm based on the choices made by them and the other firm. The profit outcomes for firm one are in blue. The profit outcomes for firm two are in red. Okay, let's analyze what each firm would do as profit-seeking oligopolies. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to analyze firm one, and we're going to ask ourselves, what are we going to do? If we're firm one, we could either go high or we could go low. What are our best choices here? Well, first, let's look at if firm two were to go high, what would we rather do? Would we rather go high and get $100 or go low and get $50? Well, we'd rather go high and get $100. Okay. On the other hand, if firm two were to go low, and we're again thinking about this through as firm one, what would you rather do? Would we rather go high and get $60 or go low and get $20? Where again, we'd rather go high. So what we can see here is whether firm two goes high or low, firm one should always go high. Therefore, firm one has what's called a dominant strategy, which is to always price high. Because no matter what firm two does, that's always going to maximize their profits. What about firm two? Firm two in this case does not have a dominant strategy. Why not? Well, let's think through the different scenarios from firm two's point of view. Firm two has a choice. Firm two can go high or firm two can go low, okay? And their numbers are shown in red here. So if firm one were to go low, okay, then we would be looking at this in terms of the row, the second row here. If firm one goes low and we're firm two, we could go high and earn $40, or we could go low and earn $10. Well, in that scenario, we'd rather go high and earn $40 because 40 is more than 10. What if firm one were to go high? Well, if firm one were to go high, then we would be looking at this row, and we would be looking at the red numbers in this row, and we'd be saying, all right, firm two can go high or low, high or low, high or low. In this case, would we rather go low and get 90 or go high and get 50? In this case, we'd rather go low and get $90. So as you can see, there's no dominant strategy for firm two, because in one instance, it's better for us to go high, and the other instance, it's better for us to go low. So we don't have a dominant strategy. However, we do have something in this scenario called a Nash equilibrium. A Nash equilibrium is the outcome that will occur when both firms make decisions simultaneously and have all the information present. As firm two, we don't have a dominant strategy, but this information is public. So we're able to see that firm one does have a dominant strategy. So as a self-interested rational actor, we can predict that firm one is going to go high. And if firm one goes high, we know we should go low because 90 is more than 50. Therefore, the Nash equilibrium in this situation is firm one going high and firm two going low. We can predict what's going to happen in this situation, even though firm two doesn't have a dominant strategy. Since firm one's always going to go high, firm two will decide to go low. If you use this circling strategy that I just did, the way you can spot the Nash equilibrium is there will be two circles within that section of the matrix, right? So that's how you could spot it. Because there were two circles here, we know it was a Nash equilibrium. Some questions don't have a Nash equilibrium. That would be an instance in which there was only one box only one circle in each box. Okay. The AP usually doesn't do it, but in other classes, they talk about multiple Nash equilibrii, and that would be the instance where there are multiple boxes with multiple circles in each one. Okay, so those are the skills of dominant strategy and of Nash equilibrium. What have we learned today? We've learned that oligopolies must use strategic pricing. In other words, they got to worry about the other guy or the other girl when they make pricing decisions. Because of the incentives involved in this, oligopolies have a tendency to collude to gain profit. Collusion is the act of cooperating with rivals in order to rig a situation. Okay. And when there's an incentive to collude, there's also an incentive to cheat, right? And we saw that with the first example that I showed you. Firms make informed decisions based on their dominant strategies, and you guys now have the skill in terms of how to find the dominant strategy. Let's now turn to some practice questions to see if you're getting it. Here is a released AP multiple choice question having you use this skill. Notice how these are obviously not color coded because it's coming from a black and white document. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at a scenario where a company called B-Mine can either cheat or not cheat, and G-Mine can either cheat or not cheat. So we have different choices, two firms with two choices, and the different payouts in each box. So you still have all the skills you need to solve this. Let me show you what I would recommend doing. When these matrices are set up, the numbers on the left are always for the firm on the left, and the numbers on the right are always for the firm on the top. So what I would do is I would underline B-Mine, and then I would underline the numbers associated with them. Okay, and that way, as I kind of go through the scenario, like I showed you on the other slide, I can remind myself whose numbers represent whom. Okay, so pause the video, see what you come up with, and then we'll go over it together. All right, question asked, which of the following describes the dominant strategy for each firm? I'm gonna, for all these questions, I'm always gonna go through the same circling process that I did before. If we go through that circling process, all the answers that they'll ever ask you about it are gonna be right in front of you. Let's first imagine that we're B-Mine. If we're B-Mine, we can cheat and not cheat. Let's go through our scenarios. If G-Mine were to cheat, we could cheat and get 10, or we could not cheat and get 5. If that's the case, we'd rather cheat because 10 is more than 5. On the other hand, if G-Mine does not cheat, we could cheat and get 25, or we could not cheat and get 20. What do we want to do? We want to cheat and get 25. So as you can see, we have a dominant strategy of cheating. What about G-Mine? Let's go through this from G-Mine's point of view. G-Mine could either cheat or not cheat. Let's start with the scenario where B-Mine does not cheat. If B-Mine does not cheat, we could, as G-Mine, we could cheat and get 15 or not cheat and get 25. We'd rather not cheat and get 25. What if B-Mine cheats? We could cheat and get 5, or we could not cheat and get 20. We'd rather not cheat and get 20. So what does that mean? That means G-Mine should always not cheat and B-Mine should always cheat, which leads us to select answer choice E. G-Mine's dominant strategy is to not cheat, and B-Mine's dominant strategy is to cheat. Even though the question doesn't ask it, if you use this method, you can also see that we do have a Nash equilibrium because we can predict the outcome in this scenario based on the incentives presented. No doubt about it, B-Mine's going to cheat and G-Mine's not going to cheat because they're both profit-seeking firms, and this is where we're going to end up in the Nash equilibrium. How do I know? Because there's two circles in that part of the matrix. Let's do another practice question. This is from 2007 number 3 FRQ. Go ahead and pause the video, try parts A through E on your own, and then we'll go over the answers together. All right, let's solve this problem. First, I'm going to be roadway. Like I said, it may help you to underline the numbers. Roadway's numbers are going to be on the left, And these are two bus companies trying to decide if they should run early or late routes. They are strategically interdependent, so their profit is dependent on what the other guy does. Okay, so what I would do if I was doing this, I might skim through the questions first, but I would still work through the matrix before I actually started trying to answer them. So if I'm roadway, I could go early or late. If Rankin goes early, what would I rather do? I'd rather go early and get 1,000 than go late and only get 750. Again, if I'm roadway, what would I rather do? Well, if Rankin goes late, I could go early and get 950, or I could go late and get 700. Well, I'd rather go early. What does that tell me? Roadway's dominant strategy is to go early. Let's go over here to Rankin. Okay, Rankin can go early or late. If roadway goes early, I can go early and get 900, or I can go late and get 850. Well, I'd rather go early and get 900 as opposed to 850. What about if roadway goes late? If roadway goes late and I'm Rankin, I could go early and get 650, or I could go late and get 800. So as you can see, Rankin Wheels does not have a dominant strategy because our best choice is dependent on what roadway does. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little X here to note for myself, no dominant strategy. I can see though that we do have a Nash equilibrium. Because roadway's dominant strategy is to go early, Rankin could then predict that roadway is going to go early, so then Rankin would go early as well. So we also see that we have a dominant strategy here. Let's go through the questions. In which market structure do these firms operate? Explain. They operate in an oligopoly. How do I know? Because there are only two firms, and because their pricing decisions and their output decisions are mutually interdependent, as shown by the matrix. If roadway chooses an early departure, which departure is better for Rankin? If roadway goes early, then Rankin would go early as well because 900 is more than 850, but it does not say explain, so you would just say early. Identify the dominant strategy for roadway, early. If choosing an early departure time a dominant strategy for Rankin Wheels? No, because if roadway were to go late, then Rankin would choose to go late as well because they'd rather earn $800. And then finally, if both firms have all the information in the payoff matrix but do not cooperate, what will be Rankin Wheels' daily profit? In other words, when we get to it, if we have a Nash equilibrium, how much is Rankin going to make? Rankin's going to make $900 because our dominant strategy and our Nash equilibrium is early, and Rankin earns 900 in early. Here is the key from the AP with all the points available. If you want to take a look at this, you can pause it and review the answers. So that's the main skill and analysis we're going to do in this class when we look at oligopolies. Let's talk briefly about oligopoly graphs, although you won't actually draw these graphs for me in this class. Okay, so because firms are mutually interdependent, there are actually three different types of oligopoly. The first type is a price leadership oligopoly. There's no graph to draw for that concept. The second concept is a colluding oligopoly. There is a graph. And then the third type of oligopoly is a non-colluding oligopoly. So let's talk about price leadership. Okay, a great example of price leadership are small town gas stations, and small town gas stations are often on similar neighborhoods or even on the same corner as each other. And typically what happens in this instance is so imagine we're in a corner with 4 gas stations. If the price leadership exists, one firm will set a price and the other 3 will copy that price. Okay, in order to avoid a price war and start trying to undercut each other, they will just let the one dominant firm set a price, and then other ones will follow suit. OPEC actually does this in the oil market. Okay, so in most countries, including the US, collusion is illegal. So to formally collude and set prices is illegal, right? However, Price leadership is a strategy used by firms to coordinate prices without outright collusions, right? So you can wait until your competitor publishes their price and then you can immediately follow them. Generally, how it works is a dominant firm initiates a price change and the other firms will follow that leader. Another example of this would be like in the car industry in the US. Every year when a new model comes out, typically a dominant firm will set a price and the others will follow suit. So when new cars come out, say Toyota might set a new price for their Camry at $22,000. Because they're a dominant firm and it's an oligopoly where price leadership exists, then Honda and Kia and Ford will set their prices really similarly for their sedans that are coming out that year. Okay, so this is a way that a lot of prices kind of huddle around each other in oligopolies, even though there's technically no collusion going on. Price leadership sometimes does break down, and you can get a temporary price war where firms don't follow those price increases and try to undercut each other. And so that does exist. Recently in 2020, that's been occurring in the oil market as OPEC has gotten more competition from US because of shale gas and fracking. They're trying to put a lot of competitors out of business by dropping their prices and initiating price wars. The second type of oligopoly is a colluding oligopoly. A colluding oligopoly is also known as a cartel. This is where a group of producers create an agreement to fix prices high. They set price and output at an agreed upon level. In order to act as a cartel, you have to have identical or really, really similar demand structures and cost curves. And you must have a way to punish cheaters. So OPEC is able to work because they're able to punish and sanction countries that don't follow the price changes that Saudi Arabia effectively sets as a leader of OPEC. Okay. Key idea from this: if you're successfully colluding oligopoly, you act as a monopoly. So if you're ever asked to graph a colluding oligopoly, you would simply draw a monopoly graph, right? So this is a colluding oligopoly that is acting as a monopoly, and those firms would then divide up and share the profit amongst them. Okay. The third type of oligopoly is a non-colluding oligopoly. However, what that's going to set up is something called a kinked demand curve. Super interesting concept. It's beyond the scope of our course. So in the name of simplicity and avoiding confusing you, I won't teach you the kinked demand curve. It is a super interesting concept. So if you want to talk about it, let me know, but I'll go ahead and stop there. You've now learned the four market structures. Something that's really helpful to do at this point in the course is complete this mega Venn diagram and look at all the key characteristics that exist between perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly, and see if you can identify and sort the key characteristics. I'll close with this slide, which will show you 15 different concepts that you should, by this point in the course, be able to place on that matrix. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.